So guys, we're going to have half hour of questions now. Brilliant talk, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We're going to have half hour questions. I think it's really, really important that as well as hearing from the speaker each month, you guys get to look at how do you actually take this stuff and do something with it. So this is your half hour to kind of quiz Elliot and say, well, that's all very well to say that, Elliot, but what does it look like for me as a coach? So perhaps you've got some practical questions or some theoretical questions, whatever might come up for you. Now, I'm a real bookie, as most of you guys know. And while Elliot was talking, I went off and bought the Theodore Sabin book for 1p plus postage and packing. However, the good news is, if you want to buy the David Sauter book, which he referred to, he got in early because he said it was 60 quid. Now, I'll tell you how much it is on Amazon. If you've got the money going, it's £554. New. No, but come on, guys, that's new. Now, if you want it used, 179 quid. So guys,
I did get in early then.
We've got half an hour of questions, so I'm going to sort of step aside, but I just want to make sure we close it nice. So I'm going to be here to leave room off if I need to. But guys, over to you. Let's get some questions to Elliot.
If we would like to start incorporating experiential coaching into our work, where would you recommend us to start?
Good question. I always work from the end backwards. So where do I want my client to end up? And then I'll work backwards in terms of devising the methodology. That's how I would do it. So I knew where I wanted people to be. For example, I did something called the judgment tunnel, and to really be conscious of the self-talk, the self-judgment. And I work backwards. Well, what can provoke that? And put the steps in between. Test it. Get some friends, get some people, say, look, you know, sometimes when I'm testing a process, I'll get a client and say, look, I'm not charging for you because I'm testing this process, and you're helping me out, gain their permission, don't just do it. But I would work backwards, so from the end result, and that's how I would do it.
And if I can,
yeah,
one more. And with developing the process, where do you get the inspiration from, or where would you advise us to get inspiration from? Obviously observing others, but...
Yeah. It's interesting, I get inspiration from so many places. I'm an avid learner, and I listen to a lot of auditory things. You know, I'm always studying, so I'm just doing level 3 hypnotherapy. I studied NLP, EFT. I'm always looking, and then when I studied Andrew Salter, I was like, that would make a great experiential process, you know, putting people through those stages. And I'm always thinking how that can impact people. I get inspiration from the X Factor, believe it or not. You can laugh, it's okay. But yeah, I look around and I'm thinking, okay, what's a very experiential process that gets people in? So I do something called the Communicate Factor, where my members get up and pitch, and there's judges, and it's all very intimidating on purpose to create the anxiety, the experience of standing there in front of, you know, potential whatever investors or clients. And if they nail it, they get a Communicate Factor. So yes, it's a kind of based on, I get it from, that's why I'm an avid observer, and I watch, you know, I went to Thorpe Park, and I was like, right, I'm doing a whole process around creating your own ride, and I haven't quite devised it yet. So many places will trigger me off. I'm working on a process now called In the Ring, and that it is based in boxing. I'm not going to give it too much because Pilar's one of my advanced members and I don't want to ruin it for her. So but I just get inspired, like, okay, how can that be of impact, and how can I use that process to transform? Yeah. So it's always got to be about empowerment. Yeah. So it's never about setting someone up to fall and to feel crap and to feel bad. None of those processes, well, at the time they lend themselves to feeling that way, it's always about the debrief afterwards. So I also do the values game, which you've played, and that just shakes people's model of the world, because suddenly they're confronted with, you know, people treading on their values and everything they thought was important and being manipulated, and they're suddenly like, but it's always about empowerment, never letting them leave feeling crappy. Yeah? So I would study a lot of the scholars. There's so many people to study their processes. Nothing's really new. Nothing is. You know, it's about taking it, making it your own. So don't be afraid to take a process that works, you know, NLP or hypno, and go, okay, how can I turn that into mine? Acknowledge it. You know, the processes that I shared with you tonight, I learned from Clinton. It's okay. I can't pretend to know everything. In fact, the more I grow, the less I know. The more I study, I'm like, God, I don't know anything. The more courses I do, I'm like, gosh, I don't know nothing. You know, how can I call myself an expert? But in the area I am, I'm an expert. But everywhere else, I'm not. And I'm happy to accept that I don't know much. It's good, it keeps me hungry to learn. Maybe one day I'll reach math to read. Till then, I'm happy to carry on learning. Does that answer your question?
Yes. I will.
No, if you.
No, because I'm interested in, like, for example, this powerful exercise in Power to Succeed. I don't remember the name. This bridge tunnel.
Judgment tunnel.
That judgment tunnel. Yes, that was very powerful. And so I'm just curious, you know.
So the way that was simple. How that came along. There's a particular moment I was standing on a cliff in Australia, right, by Coogee Beach, for those who've been there. Nice tall cliff, about 50 yards. And I was standing there, I had all these voices in my head, so much judgment. I was like, oh my God, it's so noisy. And I was like, well, how do I collapse that? And funny enough, the inspiration from that came from what is called the white dog experiment. And it's way back, I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. They used to train dogs to attack black people. The KKK used to. And how did they untrain them? Is they used to have a bite, and they used to get the dog to bite at the black person, and the black person would just hold his own over a certain length of time, till eventually, what happened to the dog? He realised he can't overpower it and became its friend. You know, became a friend. And, you know, that's how they untrained the dog. And I was like, right, well, if we can put ourselves up against our judgment and collapse them by vocalising them so much, then there's something there, and you've experienced it, and I hope at some point you all experience it. That was based on that. That was based on that project. It was based on how they untrained these racist dogs, in essence. You know, so I get people to really almost bite their own judgment, like, till eventually they get to the point where they're like, what a load of nonsense. Why do I talk to myself that way? So that came, interestingly enough, from a completely different inspiration. So it's just being inspired by life. I know that's really corny, but it's true. Yeah, does that answer? Yeah. And it is a powerful process. Yes.
In the previous exercise, you got us to mime or to not use words. Can you give us more information about the power of that and the process? Because I think I certainly found it very difficult to express what I wanted to say without language.
It's interesting because we rely so much on words, and words are such an enforcer of a situation and a story. The moment you take that away, first of all, it interrupts the whole pattern. Your whole ability to suddenly express yourself changes. Because if you look at it from a therapeutic point of view, you're looking at the thoughts, the emotions, and the behaviours, right? Now, we express our thoughts generally through words. Even when we're hearing our voice and we don't speak them, now our body, muscularly, on a neuro level, reacts to the thoughts and the words we are saying, right? So if you think of a lemon, your mouth goes, right? If you think about speaking, your muscles fire off. But you take that away, suddenly you have to find another way to tell the story. Most of you started giggling. Most of you started laughing. Or some of you went, I can't do it, right? But it changes the whole way you perceive and have to explain the situation. So the elimination of words is a very powerful way of doing it. So in a therapeutic or coaching environment, you take, okay, tell me that same story with no words. The whole modality of the world has changed because of the reliance on words. The whole thought pattern is like, how do I do this? It's almost like they become completely numb and unable to express themselves. So when I do this, and I did this with a guy who was in prison, and he came out and he had a lot of guilt around what he did. And we did this with him. He's a big tattoo guy. At times when I did the 5 things, I was a bit, yeah. But suddenly he couldn't, his whole toughness dropped. Because he's so used to go, yeah, and I did this, and I did that, and I smashed him, and when I took that away, he became really soft, and he couldn't quite tell, so when he was describing it, he was still powerful, but he couldn't quite say it the same, and it lost its merit. It lost its weight. And then when I did it the other phrases, the other way, by the end of it, he burst out crying. I mean, it was an emotional release. And then he was actually able to contact the family and apologise. I'm not sure if they forgave him or not. But for him to be able to do that was massive. And again, I taught him a lot about detachment. Don't expect anything back. You're doing this for you. Right? So don't expect them to say, okay, come over for a cup of tea. you know, but he was able to do it because I took away words. So with him I did a lot of work on not using words to express himself.
But is there anything empowering or anything that you would do to support them once the exercise is over? Because obviously you don't know what's going through their head when they are gesticulating.
Absolutely. So we would debrief that. We'd analyse what went on. And what was that? And how did you feel at this moment? And how can you replicate that in your life? So when you feel this coming along, what could you do? Well, I could change my language. If you find yourself in that tense situation when you're about to erupt and you've just spent 5 years paying for that, what could you do? Well, I could think of myself as, I don't want to give one of the states away, but I could think and tell myself in that way, and then I'll laugh. I'm like, great. So you learn to own them as pattern interrupts of his own. But it is being analytical with what came up. So if I analyse everything that came up from the second exercise, the negotiation exercise, we'd have a really long coaching session with a lot of you, right? But it is about going there and having the courage to go there with the client and put them up against their stuff. Yeah, is important. Does that answer your question?
Yes, very much so, thank you.
Yes, lady, and then I'll come to you. Yes.
I'm curious about the negotiation exercise and how you could do that in a one-to-one situation with someone. Would you usually do it by taking something away from them and just inviting them to negotiate for it?
Yes, if it's assertive, conflicted, if they're not expressing themselves.
Yeah.
Again, it's building rapport and grace, but absolutely, and I won't tell them what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to say, look, I'm going to take something away. I'm like, can you just hand me that?
Okay.
And, okay, great. Do you want it back? Well, yeah. Go on, ask for it. What? Well, come on, you want it? Or what? Yeah, give it back. No. What do you mean no? No, you're not getting back. Yes, and I would contrive that. But that's where the debrief is important. Afterwards, do you understand what we did there? Can you see? At some point, they always go, ah. I know what you're doing now. Okay, good. Do you want it back? Yes, well, get it then. But you have to have that rapport and grace with them. It's a collaborative thing. They have to know that you might do that. So even if you're not in that session. But yeah, do it. You know, people are always treading all over me. One of my clients, no name mentioned because some of you might know her, you know, she came and said, you know, all these guys walk on me. I'm like, lie down then. She's like, what? I'm like, lie down, I'll walk on you. She's like, what do you mean? I said, look, if you want to be a doormat, let me, I'll stand on you. She's like, what do you, lie down. Literally, this is what I did to her. And she's like, what do you mean? You're free? No, lie down. And she laid down. I said, do you want me to stand on you? She goes, no. I said, why can you stand up to me and not to the guys that are walking all over you? She left that guy dumped him next day. Because she was aware, metaphorically, physically, what she was doing, even though she was like, oh. And then she stopped feeling sorry for herself because of creating that situation. So it can be done that way too, again, with grace and respect. I would never stand on her, actually. There's a whole violation of client-coach relationship. But just the thought of it, and actually getting her to, come on, you want to be a doormat? Be a doormat. How's it feel? It feels good, it feels rubbish. Great. That's what you're doing to yourself on a daily basis. Oh. And that's what you're doing in relation. Oh, do you want to carry on being a doormat? No. So her trigger word for change is doormat. All right, I'm not a doormat. Good. Do something about it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, my question's a bit technical, but I'm just wondering how you structure your sessions, because I think a lot of coaches work on a sort of 1 hour basis, and I think, maybe I'm wrong, but I would imagine doing this experiential stuff, that's going to be very difficult to do within 1 hour, because if you're in the middle of the exercise, I wouldn't feel comfortable to say, all right, hold that thought until we see each other again next week. So
no, you don't, because you know, if someone's gone somewhere quite dark, first of all, that's why I tend to do sessions and not an hour. They're normally an hour and a half max, so it's an hour, 2 hours. I feel sometimes 3 hours can be too much, especially if you're going very deep. But what I would say is I would, look, come prepared with some, you know, we're going to be working on this, be ready, we're going to be moved fast. And a lot of this work doesn't need a lot of time, actually, because it very quickly exposes them anyway, because you set them up, in a way. But what I would do at the beginning, when I do the consultation, I sit down, and this is where you ask them if you've ever, you know, been depressed, or if you're on any medication, you go through the consultation process, is where I would devise, say, look, we're going to work on this, this, this. These sessions, be aware, I'm going to do something quite experiential. So just be prepared for it. And I'll remind them, next session we're going to do something quite unique. It's going to go deep and quick, so you're pre-framing them. And then they come and go, what is it? Give me your phone. Do you want it back? Yes. No. Huh? Right? And then, because the important part is the last 20 odd minutes. Right? So even if you haven't completed, let's say it's 2 hours and they haven't moved, you've got to make sure they feel okay and say, look, I'll work with that. Let's carry on that work, because otherwise you might be spending days. But the important part does lie in the debrief. So normally after those activities, I'll have a whole flip chart and I'll be debriefing all the learnings, not on a one-on-one basis. On a coaching basis I wouldn't do that, but I would sit and explain everything and why and this. So if you're going to integrate that into your coaching, then allow the time for the explanation, for them to give it 100% and for you to debrief. So you might need to do a 2-hour session. 20 extra quid for booking the room versus that thing. Yes?
So the debrief, is it that you both talk about your observations and you try and go deep with the client then, or are you feeding back to them what you've seen?
But it's a collaborative effort, you know, it's not about, I'll share, this is what I saw, is that right? They've got to share back what they're getting from it, because in the essence it's about them, not about me. And I've got to get them to share their experiences. So it's never about me actually, but it's about my observations in a collaborative way. So I will always find out how they found it. So someone can get really emotional doing the power of release and cry, while someone will just laugh. They're equally important when they get to the end of it. And they'll go, okay, why are you laughing? Well, because actually I realise how ridiculous I sound when I do all these things. Good. Where else are you telling yourself these stories? Yeah? I do ask more than where else is that showing up in your life. My coaching does consist of more than that question, just so you're aware. But it is getting them to that awareness of where else are they doing that. So it's a collaborative thing. It's more about them than about me. So I might perceive that they're really, really stuck here. But if they're not ready to go there, I'm not going to. So you know what? You really need to deal with your mom issues. Huh? How'd you pick that up? And then you've opened a whole can of work. It's more like, great, here's what I see. Next session, I want to really tackle something else. Come prepared. Here's what, you know. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Any other questions?
What kind of client situations do you find most effective using this experiential approach? I notice you have a lot of emotional release. You mentioned guilt and deal with conflict. I'm just wondering, are there any specific or themes that you find is most effective using this approach, or any other you find challenging using this approach?
CEOs aren't very open to experiential training. CEOs. I'm serious. They're not. They're just, they're very, because CEOs are incredible people and they're for a reason. They do things their way. So they're not very open to doing this. On one-on-one, yes, but never in a group situations, because they have their thing. I do a lot of work with business owners and entrepreneurs who are very stuck around a situation. So this, for you, I know it's seeming emotional, but for some people it's about assertion, being assertive, it's about certainty and confidence. So I do a lot of work with the people who are business owners, startups mainly, or want to make the shift from employment to running a business. This is primarily who I do this work with, because if you want to magnify someone's limiting beliefs, get them to run their own business. Get them to think about running their own business. So it's about releasing those so they can be free to do that, or maybe realize that running a business isn't for them. So for most situations, one-on-one, as long as you've got good rapport, they'll trust that you've got the best interest for them. Group situation change is brilliant. It's also a good icebreaker. The conflict one, the negotiation one's really good. I don't do the judgment tunnel anywhere besides Power to Succeed, because it needs that kind of environment. The values game, I do something called the Power of Networking, which is highly experiential, and that's literally around learning to network. So you've got to gauge your market and your audience and really know if it's right for them, but don't let your own limiting beliefs get in their way. So while Power of Networking is a great game, and that can work on any level, I won't necessarily do that with a certain bunch of people who, for example, suffer from social anxiety and can't even speak in public, let alone getting them to network with other people. So you've got to really know your market. But this is just my version. You can devise your own version of experiential training that can work for CEOs and can work for directors and can work for bankers. You just need to find out what it is they want and how you want to get them there. So it can work. You know, there's an argument that everything's experiential. I'm not sure, you know. But it wasn't until I stood up and did things did I shift, while I was being taken through, you know, traditional coaching and even NLP at times just didn't move me to where I needed to get to. Does that answer your question? Sorry, I can't be more... Yes?
With the negotiation exercise, obviously it's individual, given the client that you have in mind. Do you have a particular... So for example, we did it there, but obviously there's many of us here. Your typical question after that post-analysis or debrief, would it be along the lines of what is it that you noticed, or what is it you observed, what came up for you, or is it is the aim to try and reveal to them the pattern of their behaviours?
First of all, the pattern of their behaviours. That's what I'd like to expose. What is their pattern? What's their habits? What's their what's their coping mechanism in essence? You know, did they walk away? Did they shrug? Did they get aggressive? And then I would look to release that. So how do we deal with that now we've exposed it?
So for example, if I was there and Marcus had said, what did you notice about yourself? I probably wouldn't have immediately gone towards my pattern of behaviour.
But then that's how you direct it. So it could
but
be...
that's what you fundamentally do, you bring it back to their pattern of
Yeah,
behaviour.
that's how I would address it.
Yeah.
Did you notice how you gave up? Did you notice how you stopped asking? Yeah. Did you notice how you handed me your phone and told me to forget about it? Hey, forget about it. Yeah? That's what I would... I'm like, oh, really? Yeah. Okay, let's look at that. Let's really break that down. That's when you... Depends how you want to break. Okay, what's the thought? What's the emotion? And you can start to get really... And then you can look at replacing, doing all that stuff. It depends on your style of coaching. But I would always... That's my thing. That's why the behaviour. I would always look at the behaviour. Why are you smiling through that the whole time? Well, because it didn't bother me. No, but it did. I have your phone. You don't want your phone? No, I do. So why are you smiling? And I'd really push them, make them conscious to it. Where, you know, you can't smile through everything in life. No, you can. No, that's a coping mechanism. That's your good boy, your good girl. Everything's okay coming up. I will always alert them to behaviour first, because then we can shift it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
That's my style.
So when you meet resistance as well, and if they chose not to go on with the exercise, and then, okay, you debrief, because they're not growing, is the same thing again, is that the typical way, like, so would you approach that analysis with, is that what you typically do on a daily basis? Yeah, okay, great.
I would say, yeah, and it's almost that typical, where else do you keep shortchanging yourself? Here's a process that you can find massive freedom with. Here's a process that will help you, and you're backing down. If you want to pay me to back down, we can sit here in silence. I'm good with that. But that's not why you're here, and bring them back to why they came in the first place. But yeah, certainly, that's a behaviour. Definitely address it there and then. Not make them feel bad, not punish them. But look, here you are, you're resisting. What is that? You came to me for a reason. Well, I feel stupid. All right, well, I didn't say it'll be easy, but it'll be worth it. And then, look, what Nick said. If they're so uncomfortable with it, then I won't pursue it. I'll look at different alternatives. If they're like, look, I just don't like this method. Okay, let's use a different one. That's okay. It's no reflection of you as a coach. It doesn't make you a bad coach if they don't like that method. Does that help?
Yeah, great, thank you.
Very last question, guys. One more, if there is one.
Yes.
Well, it's more of an observation. We're going through all of this as all the techniques and everything, but I'm in awe of you and Nick a lot of the time. I've been coaching for 10 years or something, and I was up here last week, 3 weeks ago, and I found it really difficult to break it down. And you've done such an amazing job of breaking the techniques down. But what I also see is that you are inherently a coach. And so it's coming from within. I know that's the way I work. And I'm like, boy, I could not break down what I do the way you've broken it down.
Okay.
And it's the truth. So my observation is it's amazing for everybody. It's amazing having these techniques. And boy, I've learned masses writing things down. But I also know that from inside, I know inherently what is right for my client, or what I need to do for them. So that was just an observation of
Absolutely.
mine, and that's what you're really great at. You have both. So you have the backup staff that is, that comes from the educational part of it, but we are coaches because we know how to relate to people and we can understand people, and we're not afraid of that.
Great observation.
So thank you for breaking it down that way. I mean, that's a talent.
Thank you so much.
And Nick has it as well, so I've been looking at his videos, I'm like, yay!
Final
What
words,
is-
Elliot? Final words, we want to close up now.
I just want to say a massive, massive thank you. If you do want to experience more of this work, I do have a seminar. You can register. It's happening in 2 weeks, 1st and 2nd of November. It's free. There's no sales. You can join us, taste this, see this as a coach. If you enjoyed it, there's more to come. I'd invite you. Otherwise, I'm very happy to sit down and have a coffee with any of you. You can just drop me an email and say, hey, can we do coffee? Happy to do coffee, connect with you, however I can be of support. I think, the world definitely needs great coaches, and I know Nick certainly trains a lot of the great coaches because of who Nick is. He's very authentic, he's an avid learner, and that's why I think we connect very well. And there's a lot of sharks out there, which is why I know you're in safe hands with Nick. So carry on, be great coaches, do the way that works for you, and let's go change some lives together. So thank you.
Thank you.